Today's Rambam is Perek Ches Michos Shevitat Yom Tov, Halacha Yud Zayin. Osur la'asois melacha be'arvei Yom Tovim min hamincha lamaylo k'mei arvei Shabboses. It is forbidden to do any work be'arvei Yom Tovim min hamincha lamaylo, just like an Erev Shabbos. The only question is, what Achreinim already asked, on Erev Shabbos, the Rambam did not mention that you're not allowed to do any malacha. And the answer they gave is because the Rambam says that the different keys that they blew on Erev Shabbos to be mashbis or omi melachton, so that's already he says. It says, he says the Rambam will pass like these days that say it's from Mincha K'tana and onwards. So therefore, that is a raya that Rambam held that you have to do. But the Rambam Lepoil does not actually bring it down. You don't see bracha, you don't give him makas mardas. We don't put him into nidui. Chutz mi erev Pesach achach tzois, shoyis b'malocha achat tzois menadem. We put him into nidui. Vein tzorch leima shemakan makas mardas melenido. The vishabayim arba'osa benissen eine kishar yomim tevim. That means if you have the korban, if you be makriv a korban on that day, so that day becomes a Yom Tov. That's how we say the korban. And Ibal tells everybody's mechuyev to bring a korban Pesach on Erev Pesach. Plus, you have to bring a korban chagiga. They should leyechal ala seva. So therefore, the Rambam comes along and says, "There's a chiv medaraisa. There you could say there's a aloch medaraisa. There's a yom simchasei, and as a result of that, you cannot do malachim and Torah." So the far, that's why that if you do go ahead and do malacha, you give makas mardas, etc. Because since I have a Pesach, you have to give chagiga shchitas kor. Now, one shaila here, which Achreinim get very excited about, is what about bizman hazeh? Let's say a guy is b'derech recheiko, he's a potter from korban Pesach, so he should be allowed to do malacha. Same thing with chagiga. If he's not going to bring the chagiga, he's b'derech recheiko, then he's going to bring a chagiga. I'll say, guys, are tomei. So in that case, maybe you'll be permitted to do so. So the shail is, we come along and we say that bizman hazeh, we don't do any malacha after chatzais, because we're having many aviseinu b'yodenu. The charaya that even if those people who could not bring the korban Pesach, the bala takona was then, they made a takona, so I feel a bottle of tam of that takona. We still come along and say, first of all, we say that everybody had that isa. Makes a difference, whatever it is, he made an isa for everybody. Besides that, he made an isa from everybody, they come along and they say that today, since even it's bottle hatam, so other achreinim want to say, why do we say the bottle hatam? So why should we ask it? Because Shemi Yibona Mikdash. We have many times in the Gemara, and Sukkot, and other places where the Gemara says Shemi Yibona Mikdash, and Shemi Yibona Mikdash. Then you'll have to bring the korban. You have to bring korban. It's also been malacha. Now, why is asur? Because as Al Rebbe says in Chos Pesach, Shesh Yom Tov Hu Lei, that it has a din of Yom Tov. Now, Bemis, this is based on the Gemara in Makom Shenoagu. The Gemara Makom Shenoagu, Psochim, Nafnu Aleph. Makom Shenoagu Lasem Lacha Be'Achatzis Eis Makom Shenoagu Ein Oisin. So Rashi says, why do we come along and we say Shalei Lasis Malacha? Says Rashi, Kidei Shlei Tor B'Malacha, because if a person is going to get Torud in Malacha, the Yishkar B'Yochem, so you forget about burning the Chometz, Ushchitas HaPesach, the Tikkun Matzo, the Tzerach HaLayla, the Mitzvah L'Treach Mebeit Yoim, to make sure that everything is done that has to be done for the Seder at night is a mitzvah to make sure everything is done. The Kedoma Perek Basar, like the Gemara says, Arvi Psochim, Choit v'matzo belel Psochim b'shvil tinei kishalei yishtu. The thing is, you got to start with the Seder properly. So all the children, no one should fall asleep. So therefore, everything that we can make as possible for the Seder, then immediately should start the Seder right away, is specifically shalei yishnu taneka. So therefore, all the malacha that you're supposed to do on Erev Yom Tov. So therefore, you got to come about the choice from Rashi. And Makom Shenoagu, that you should do all the things on Erev Pesach, because you should be able to eat the Seder 1, 2, 3. The Gemara Glai, my Shno, my Iri Avi Psoch, my Filish Erev Shabbos, Armin Tevim Nami. What's the difference? So he comes along and says that the difference is going to be a difference in time, Simen Bracha and Shamute, and the Gemara gives nafki minutes, but the Gemara does not actually say why on a regular Erev Yom Tov. So you can come along, maybe you want to bring a Korban Chagiga. So others answer, no, you don't bring the Korban Chagiga on Erev Yom Tov, you bring it on Yom Tov Gufa. So therefore, why don't we actually do it? And the Gemara doesn't seem to say so. You could come along and say that the reason why we don't do it. So the Alter Rebbe is a famous Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe Reish Nun Aleph. And by Yosin in Shulchan Aruch, it says beferish. Alter Rebbe Reish Nun Aleph says as follows: Leilazes Melocha berev Shabbos min hamincha lamayla. It's a mechaber, the same mechaber by us. And the Alter Rebbe also that you shouldn't do any melocha on Erev Shabbos. And if you do any reya, simen bracha. And the Avraham says enough. Yemina pragmatia enough. And the Bishosef himself brings 2 days that says Yesh Mefarshim Mincha Gdeila, which would be Chatzeis. Yesh Mefarshim Mincha Ktana, and others they say that they do it for Mincha Ktana. So you see that now by Erev Pesach makes a lot of sense, but by every Yom Tov and Erev Shabbos, what's the halacha? So by Erev Shabbos, it's gone poshut. And the Indian, the Gemara, the Alter Rebbe already quotes it in his Kunter Sachem, in Reish Nun Aleph. But if you get involved in work, it'll keep on going. Or you can say it's part of Kovid Shabbos, as the Rambam says, it doesn't in Perek Chavtes and Perek Lamed Shabbos. That person has to be mechake. He has to wait for the Shabbos. Mesatev Levonim, like it says about the Vayami, it was Mesatev Levonim and mechake l'chvei Shabbos Amalko. So you could say that it's just like you don't eat. Is Mesatev Shabbos l'Teyoven. You can say that not to do any melacha in order to get a person in the mood that Shabbos is actually coming, and therefore, as a result of that, that he should behave in a certain way. It comes along the Alter Rebbe in the famous in Reish Nun Aleph in the Kunter Sachem, and he says as follows. So he says that later, Buadin, he says, after the Tkiyah Beis Hoysha Chatzi Shor Kedem Zman Kabbalah Shabbos. And when they actually blew, it was a chotzi shor. Those pshita shesh lesa afilu malachas hamutores, that you should answer any type of malacha whatsoever. Im leishlochem edem osel amshuchem. K'mei she'osu oison v'sachilo chotzi shor koidem tfilas hamincha v'avis. Just like we have a din that you're not supposed to eat, not supposed to give you a suda. Sai by 5 before mincha before ma'ariv. Why? Because shemalim shrachrei. Because that's who knows what's going to happen. So therefore, as a result of that, says the Alter Rebbe, so therefore, according to this day, that holds that you have a mincha ktana half an hour before, because you're going to start doing work, then who knows, you can keep on going. Now, interesting is that the Aruch HaShulchan, the Reish Nun Aleph, Taka brings, it doesn't understand how come by us that the people who are working don't shut their shops. There are plenty of people have the shops open late, etc., etc. So Bemis, he goes bases on the Gemara, in Mokum Shonagu. The Mokum Shonagu, and Gemara says that there was a family, the Bnei Beisha, whatever they're called, that they would not go Erev Shabbos too far. So the Gemara says that Bnei Beisha Noagu L'Ei Azl Mitzul Tzidim Amale Shabbato, that they never traveled from Tzidim on Erev Shabbos. Also, the Rabbi Yechna came to Rabbi Yechna, normally our father could do it because he made panos the rest of the week or whatever, he had plenty of money. You shouldn't talk about Mishana the Minig that you actually do it. And there was an interesting minig by certain mishpachim in London that you're allowed off certain days of the week. You have to be open, certain days you're allowed to be closed. So they always closed Friday at 12 o'clock. Friday, you can't go into the shop at 12 o'clock because they kept this din. Even though Lechura is pragmatic, and of course by Erev Pesach we have a whole different akpode of which malachas you are permitted to do and which malachas you're not permitted to do. But the Alter Rebbe says, "V'hainu sheloi laskin afilu mishiyut tzolahokol b'divisofrim imandoma mincha gdeila." So therefore, there where you see very, very clearly that the whole idea that this item not to do any melacha on Erev Shabbos Yom Tov. So Mele Erev Shabbos, it's much more, it seems, and Erev Pesach, it seems to be much more chomer. But for example, by Erev Sukkot, you could also taina, then you have to get to in the Sukkah, to get the Dalad Minim, etc., etc. But let's say Erev Shavuos, what's the big deal of Erev Shavuos? Pesach, why specifically Erev Shavuos you should have to do it. But here the Alter Rebbe says that one shouldn't give a goyla mashal, etc., etc. But the Rambam says very clearly that certain things you shouldn't do. In the Simen Baroche, but Makas Martz you can't do. You can't say that Pesach, the Erev Pesach Likinyonim of the Korban and everything else is the same thing as Pesach, and therefore Erev Yom Tov you don't give Malchus and you don't give Makas Martz, even though you're doing something which L'Chorura is also. So all Achreinim get excited. What happens if it's Erev Shabbos? If this Pesach is on a Sunday, what happens? And also there's the Kasha, Arvi Chag HaSukkos, Hari Shulter B'Sukkosei, etc., etc., etc. Okay. Good.